good.
All right, good. So we'll just have to do mic check really
Yes.
quick. So
Yep.
Mary, I'll have you go first. You
Yep.
stand first, and then we'll.
Okay.
And I'm very conscious of that with Ava. So I thought, if I have Ellen here in March, even though I know this is your slammed month, I'm thinking at least I can get you before April.
April's stupid.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm
So,
I'm incredibly grateful
yeah.
to do this with
Well,
people.
thank
the
you.
10 years.
Thank
get
you.
in here and you guys do such amazing work.
Thank you. Well, we feel the same about you. Testing, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Good. Yep.
Testing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
You're fine. Yep.
Okay.
So, so I will verbally let you know, like if we need to, I used to do it kind of with a hand gesture, but I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to say. Hello, and welcome to Timing is Everything, a program of Care Dimensions. My name is Mary Crow, Director of Professional and Community Education at Care Dimensions, and I'm thrilled today to have Ellen DiPaolo from Honoring Choices of Mass with us. Welcome, Ellen.
Thank you. Hi, Mary. It's great to always see you
You too.
talk with you about these important issues.
Thank you. I am so thrilled to have you here because this is such an important topic. It's and one that people don't fully understand or sometimes run from. So I definitely want to talk about this. April is National Healthcare Decision Day, and then also month, right? There's that much emphasis. So we're going to get into all of that, but before we do, I want you to tell the audience a bit about yourself.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I'm Ellen DiPaolo. I am the president of Honoring Choices Massachusetts, and we have been around for 10 years now, and our focus is just to help individual people, everybody in the state who's 18 and older, to be able to understand that they can direct their healthcare choices. It's really their choice. And then to be able to make a plan about those choices so that you can tell your family and tell your care providers what you want for care.
Yeah, I think that, and talk a little bit more, Ellen, too, about, certainly about the mission of honoring choices, but also, too, I want to talk about this, just the importance of this, why there's such a big focus on, it's not just a day, really. It's
Yeah.
really the month, but we should be focusing on this year-round. Talk a little bit about all that, if you will.
Yeah, this time of year we get pretty excited. We
Yeah.
call it a spring celebration. And although nationally, April 16th is a day when the country focuses on your making a healthcare plan or doing some documents like a healthcare proxy. Well, that's a normal day for us at Honoring Choices.
Yeah.
So because that's what we do every day is we help people say, how are you feeling today? You want to talk to your doctors about your care. That's making a plan.
Yeah.
That's really what it is to say, how are you feeling? What do you need to do to go forward? And then let's write some of that down
Right.
in those planning documents in case one day you get sick, even for a short time, and you can't speak with your doctors. Well, there's your choices and what you want for care is written in those documents.
Yeah.
And that's why they're so important.
They really are important, and I think sometimes people shy away from doing this because I feel that, and I think one of the biggest things is they feel like they're losing control, which in fact is just the opposite.
Yeah.
They're taking charge of their health care.
That's a really good point. And that's all we talk about in Honoring Choices. What I think we've been taught is that a lot of planning is about when you're sick. And that's why it's scary. But in fact, the truth of the matter is, in Massachusetts, once you hit 18 years old, so this is true for everyone in your life who is 18,
Yeah.
you have the right to make choices.
Yeah.
And so when you're healthy and still, on a path to good care, no matter where you are, that's the time to make a plan.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we've been taught to wait, and that's then it is scary at
Yeah.
that point.
And what I have found too, Ellen, is that people do, in my career and having done a couple of decades of direct patient care work, I find that people wait until, a lot of this stuff is being approached in the ER, ICU, not the time for this to be happening.
Right, absolutely right. And so at Honoring Choices, we tried to make this really simple,
Yep.
which is to say you don't have to talk about serious illness or what you want at the end of life right away. You can actually just have a simple conversation today.
Yep.
To think about if you get sick tomorrow, who would you want in your life?
Yep.
Who's the trusted person to say, I want that person to be able to make decisions for me and to get me good care?
Yeah.
And that person is called a healthcare agent.
Yep.
And it's as simple as that, to be
Yeah.
able to pick someone. And then what we have to do in Massachusetts is it's not as simple as picking,
Right.
but we have to do a legal document called a healthcare proxy.
Yep.
And that's where you simply write down that person's name, saying, here's my healthcare agent. If I get sick, I want you to talk to this person. They know me really well,
Yeah.
and they'll be able to tell you about the care that I want.
Yeah, and these are called advanced directives, so that people understand some of these terms, Ellen, because, again, a lot of times they're hearing these forms, and an advanced directive, it's that legal document,
Yeah,
right? That
that's
we're
right.
putting in place in advance. And I always say, I like to always tweak this, because it's who we want making choices first when the day comes that we can't speak for ourselves, but really it's about who we want to be our voice when the day comes that we can't speak for ourselves. It's important to do that because people's wishes need to be honored.
That's exactly right. Yeah, and the other thing about a healthcare proxy and having a healthcare agent is that agent is really just representing you.
Yep.
Their job is to say here's what my person wants for care. It's not necessarily what I want.
Yeah.
No matter how much I like them or am
Yep.
their mother or their daughter, but what does that person want? And my job is to tell the doctors about that.
So as important as the document is the conversation.
Absolutely. And in
Okay.
fact, that's more important, right?
Yeah.
Just having those conversations. And we do it when we go to our doctor's office, right? We naturally will have a conversation, although it might be short, might be a few minutes, to say, here's how I'm feeling today.
Yep.
What are my options for care? Is it medicine? Is it therapy? I mean, what is it that's going to help me feel better?
Yep.
You're making goals for your care. And then to be able to let your people who take care of you know that so they can get you that care. That's what an advanced directive is.
Yep.
Sometimes that word is confusing,
Yep.
so we've actually made a process that hopefully will make this easy for people to take it one step at a time.
Well, that's great. So let's bring up that graphic, because you have this very nicely in a graphic about this process. So let's bring that up now. Perfect. And maybe you can kind of go through this,
Yeah.
you know, step by step.
Really quickly, and it's an inverted triangle, as you see, because the point is that most everybody can do that very first level. See
Yeah.
that green level that
Yeah.
says name a healthcare agent. Well,
Yeah.
that's what we're talking about. Name a person, and then once you say, here's the person I want, the trusted person I want, doesn't have to be family, it can be a friend, it can be anyone that you feel can represent your voice, then you write that person's name down in a healthcare proxy, and that's that line next to it. So what you see on one side of that triangle are the important conversations to have over your lifetime.
Yeah.
And then you write in the documents that go with those conversations.
yeah.
And you take it step by step. So if this month or in the next couple of weeks you want to do a healthcare proxy, terrific. Everything is on the Honoring Choices website, and it's free and it's downloadable, so that's where you find everything.
Which is wonderful. And I want to talk a little bit about that too, because, you know, in terms of, again, healthcare, very important. And I don't think people quite understand this, because they think that just, you know what, family can just make decisions on my behalf. They can't really. Really, we, you know, in this state, we have to appoint somebody. If we cannot speak for ourselves, we need to have somebody appointed. And like you say, this is for 18 and over. So I don't think people understand really the importance of this.
Yeah, and that's what happens, you know, when you have that, if you have that medical emergency, that happened to me and my family, where my husband got in a bicycle accident, and he was riding his bicycle and he got hurt, and he went to the emergency room and was pretty hurt. He needed surgery. And in the room were myself, you know, his wife, and my two sons who were over 18. They were adults. And the doctor looked at us and said, which one of you is the decision maker? Now, some people think it's automatically the spouse. But unless my name is on that healthcare proxy, I don't have any more right than my two sons to make decisions about care.
That's right.
And so that's why it's really important, as you're saying, in this state, we have to appoint. We have to put that name on the proxy. And then it gives you a lot of really great power to be able to talk to doctors, to look at the records, to make decisions about care going forward.
Yeah.
My husband did fine.
Thank goodness. Yeah, thank goodness.
And then he did his own healthcare proxy.
Very
after
good,
that.
very good. Yeah, and that, you know, when you're thinking about this too, so you're thinking about, again, the healthcare proxy, and when people are filling it out, people sometimes will only, and I just want to clarify terms this for people too, because they'll say, I'm the healthcare proxy. You're not the proxy is the form. And so what we're talking about is an agent and an alternate. People all should have an alternate.
Yeah, if you can.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's hard. What we hear from people is, you know, sometimes it's hard enough just to pick one person to be your agent, and that's okay. If you can't pick two, it's okay.
Yeah.
What we've heard from folks is that as time goes on, it gets a little easier to find that second person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how to pick the person.
Right.
And I always say, pick them with your head and not your heart.
Oh, that's nice.
Right? Because a lot of times we feel like we have to choose the person who's closest to us. But as you said, it might not be a family member. Maybe that is too difficult for them, and they might not be able to honor what your wishes are. So it might be somebody else who could be more objective.
Right, that's a good point. And we find as we talk to people, we talk to a lot of folks in the community, at the Council on Agings, in libraries, and sometimes friends are more, you know, it's just easier to have a friend listen to you and say, here's what I want for care. And the friend saying, yeah, I can do that for you.
Yes.
And so that's nice. But, you know, you've also mentioned what happens if there isn't anybody to pick.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the difficulty, right? Because I think people don't understand that. And that is hard for people, because I get asked this a lot, Ellen, and I'm sure that you do too. What do I do? What do I do if there isn't anybody, if I don't have anyone? Mm-hmm. And I think sometimes that's, you know, people don't realize some people really do struggle around this.
Yeah.
And they don't have that person, that trusted person.
Right.
So what do they do?
We get that question all the time, and we actually have a way to deal with that. It's just the way it is. We think about a third of the people we talk to, so that's a lot, right?
Yeah.
Don't have a person to pick. Either, you know, there's just no one around. We live a long time these days.
Yes.
Or it's just not going to work. Mm-hmm. So but the most important thing now is, even if you can't pick a healthcare agent, is to say, well, I do have to write down what I want for care.
Yep.
That's the really important piece. And you can do that in a document called a personal directive. Sometimes it's called a living will.
Yeah.
And that is something we have at Honoring Choices that
Yep.
you can download for free.
Yep.
And really what it is just a personal statement. You write your own little fill in the blank about, here's what's important to me. If I get sick tomorrow, here's what I want you to know about me.
Yep.
Here's what I want you to do. Here are my instructions.
Yep.
So what we find is for people who don't have an agent to pick, they do that personal directive and they share it with their doctors.
Yeah,
And,
okay.
they can put it in the medical record if they want to.
Yeah.
And that way your doctors know what you want
Yeah.
for care.
And those are important guidelines because I think that people look at that, right? And like you say, it's a form of a living will. And I do think it's important for people to understand that living wills aren't legal documents in the state of Massachusetts. However, these are critical guidelines for people. So it's still very important for them to fill these out.
Right. So what we like to say at Honoring Choices is we have a getting started toolkit.
Maybe we could bring that graphic up. We do have a graphic on that.
Yeah.
And so let's bring here we go.
There it is. So we try to make this easy for everyone to say, as we go right back to if you're 18 and older,
Yep.
you can start to make your own plan. And you can do that with this Getting Started Toolkit. So that first, number one is if you can, to choose a healthcare agent and appoint that person in a healthcare proxy.
Yep.
Number two is that personal directive we're talking about, which is this is where you give instructions for your care.
Yeah.
So the great thing is if you can pick an agent, terrific, do the healthcare proxy, and then also do the personal directive,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Because in the healthcare proxy, you're just saying, here's the person I want,
Yeah.
but you got to give that person some instructions.
Right.
So that's that personal directive in step 2. If you don't have an agent, just start with that personal directive.
Yeah.
And then step 3 is the one we sometimes forget about, which is now what do I do after I have these documents?
Yeah.
Now we have to put it into action. And so you want to give a copy to your agent or to anybody in your life who's important to you. These
Yep.
are your documents. They belong to you,
Yep.
not to the hospital, not to the doctor. They belong to you.
Yep.
And you can share them with
Right.
anyone you want.
Yeah.
So in step 3, we want to make sure you go and just give your doctors a copy
Yes.
of the proxy, and what they'll do is put it in your medical record. So it's always there to look at
Yep.
if you get sick, and then they're able to say, okay, there's the agent's name, let's call that agent. And,
Excellent.
And get people care.
Yeah, that's really wonderful to have, because I think that makes it easier for people to see this go in steps like this.
Yeah.
I think that people, again, I think it's important to people to have control, and this does give them control. People need to understand, too, you can make changes to this at any time. And there are changes in life. So who you have now, it might not be who you would have down the road if things change in your life. But so it's important to update these documents as appropriate, and then have that, and like you say, keep the original, right? And because sometimes people think, and oftentimes they put that and give that to the doctor's office or the hospital, and they say, well, I don't have my forms.
Right, that's really true. Yeah, and I think that's what we talk about, that healthcare planning as a process.
Yeah.
I think people have been taught to do the document once and put it in the drawer and never think about
Yeah.
it, and that doesn't help you. Those documents are living, breathing documents.
Yes.
They follow us through our lifetime, and especially with a personal directive where you're writing instructions for your care,
Yes.
as you say, that's going to change.
Yeah.
It changes for everybody.
Yes.
As our health needs change, our decisions change, our choices change, so keeping them up to date
Yeah.
and making sure people who are important to you have them.
Yes.
And have the changes.
To
Yeah.
have the update, and it is a process,
It's a
isn't it?
process.
And things too, how I feel now might not be how I feel depending on how life unfolds, if with an illness, those sort of things. So I think that that's important to people. I think it's also important because, again, I'm going to go back to this control thing because, again, I hear this a lot out there. People worry that, oh my gosh, I've signed this, now somebody has control over my health care needs. They don't have control. Actually signing that form, that does not get implemented. It doesn't get enacted until a physician determines that you lack capacity. And then it can be activated. It can even be activated short time, right? And then
Right.
deactivated.
Exactly, yeah, and that's a great point, taking control. And one of the things I think we haven't told people enough about is that it really is your health care and your choice.
Yes.
The law in Massachusetts says you get to decide.
Yes.
And you get to decide all through your lifetime.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes our health systems don't remind us about that.
Yeah.
They will instead say, well, I'll tell you what's best for you. And people, of course, feel very out of control with that.
Yeah.
So as a person who's 18 and above, you say, it's my right to decide. Let me tell you what I'm worried about. Let me tell you, what I want for care, and let's see if you can get it. Let's see if we can work together and get it for
Right.
me.
And we keep going back because it's important that people understand this 18 and over, because a lot of times we don't need to do that. We're not, that's for people who are old or frail or, and it's not true either, right?
It's not true.
Yeah.
My sons who are in their mid-20s, things happen. They play sports on the field, they get sick. They too have been in the hospital where they couldn't speak for themselves.
Yeah.
And it was, because I'm their mother who does healthcare proxies, they had one.
Yes, yeah.
And it just made our whole family experience so much better to be able to say, I need you to take care of my son, and I'm his healthcare agent. So tell me what's going on. What tests are going to go on, and how are you going to care for him? And what my son said to me was, it was so nice, Mom, to know that you had the power, not just as my mother, but as my agent, to get me that care.
Absolutely.
And that's true for everybody, any age.
Yeah, and that's the thing, because again, a lot of times people are because they think this is just for people who are older or frail. And I like to remind people really how healthcare proxies came about. Well, because of landmark cases, like Karen Ann Quinlan, Terry Chavo, Nancy Kruzan, who are all in their 20s.
Right.
So I think sometimes we have we think we're going to be fine and nothing's going to happen to us.
Yeah.
And if we talk about this stuff, we have some magical thinking going on. We're such a death-denying society. If we don't talk about it, it's not going to happen. Or if we do talk about it, something will. This is a way, again, it's not about that. This is about taking charge, having control over our healthcare decisions, which, like you said, many people want now. They are. It's different now, right?
It is, and what we've heard from our doctors and our care professionals is they really like it when you have a healthcare proxy.
Yeah.
It helps them to say, okay, my patient who I care about is sick. How do I get the best care for that person? It helps to have a healthcare agent, or even that personal directive. If you can't have an agent, what we say is, that's okay. That's just life sometimes.
Yeah.
But to write down your instructions for care in that personal directive is so helpful to our doctors.
Yeah, absolutely.
In getting you that good care.
I've also seen many times, Ellen, where because of that information being written down and illustrated, it can really help in terms of not with lack of dissension in families. I think it can be a relief. I think it can be, because we know even when families get along, when there's a crisis, a health crisis, it can stir up all kinds of emotion.
Absolutely.
So having things in place like that can help with that as well.
Yeah, and we always look at it as a real gift.
Yeah.
My mother, who recently passed, she was 92, had a wonderful life. She always said to us from when we were little, I want to give you that gift of knowing what to do for me when I get sick.
Wow.
And that's, we've had that. It was such an important message our whole life. And when she passed, it was just then so easy, or when she was really sick too, to get her what she wanted.
Yes, yeah.
And the calm and the peace that she felt about that, as well as our whole family.
Yeah.
It really was a gift to do it ahead.
Yeah, it does. Affects people's bereavement as well.
It does.
And I think it's so hard. And again, being in this field for so long, I've seen how it is so. It's excruciating to make life or death decisions for people we love. But when we understand what a person's wishes are, we're not making those life or death decisions. We're honoring their wishes.
That's right.
And wow, does that I'm not minimizing it. It's still hard.
Yeah.
However, boy, it brings on a whole different perspective, doesn't it?
And we get back to that point of control.
Yeah.
We honor that person's wishes to say, yep, you still have control, even when you're this sick.
Yeah.
And for some people who are sick in their 20s, they're sick and then they're able to get better, they still have that control to say, here's what I want you to do for me if I get sick.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you look at the documents that way, they really do help you have control. And they don't, as you mentioned, you have the full right to make decisions unless a doctor comes in and says, through an evaluation, that you don't have that ability anymore.
Right.
But you can easily do a healthcare proxy, and then you get sick, and then you get better,
Right.
and then all the decisions are yours again.
Yes,
Right.
yeah. And sometimes people will say, and I will just bring this up a little bit because, again, I think this can be, because there is the MOLS form, okay, the Massachusetts Medical Order for Life-Sustaining Treatment.
Right.
Some people will say to me, okay, so I need to do the MOLS or I need to do the healthcare proxy? And I say yes.
Do both.
Right, because
Yeah.
they're different forms. You know, one is an actual medical order form versus a legal document where you're appointing.
Right, yeah, and it does get confusing in Massachusetts, and that's why we put that healthcare planning process graphic together, which is on our website. Take your time with it. But if everybody starts with a healthcare proxy, that's where you start.
Yep.
And then as your healthcare changes, you can do other documents. Now, the most order that you're talking about is only for people with serious illness, as you know.
Yeah.
So, you know, you don't have to do that right away.
Yeah.
But that healthcare proxy, the personal directive, those are the two I would do.
Yep.
And you know, we as we work sometimes with at senior centers, they get not only excited for themselves to be able to do these documents, but they say, you know what, my granddaughter who's 21 needs to do this.
Yes.
And as the kind of the head of the family, they go and make sure their family all have documents.
Absolutely.
It's a nice thing to
Yeah.
do that way.
And you know, I often bring up this example. I have a friend, a nurse, who's been in the field for many years, and actually her entire family comes together at one time during the year, and it's at Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And it's a big family, and they actually review their wishes because it's the one opportunity they're all together. And it's, people think, oh my gosh, how, you know, that's a down. No, it's not actually. It's a celebration still. They talk about any changes or wishes that they have, and then they go on and they enjoy the holiday and everything else, but they use that opportunity out of crisis time again.
Yeah, that's a wonderful idea, because it's just a family talking.
Yeah.
It really is about, here's how I want you to help me
Right.
if I get sick. That's all it really is.
Yes.
And the gift across for everybody is that's
Yeah.
a great idea.
Well, and you know what happens sometimes too is that because people will say, it gets confusing for them because again, if they're not all talking, well, Mom didn't say that to me. She might have said it to you. You're the healthcare agent, but she never told me that this is what she wanted. That's where again there can be some conflict.
That's right, and that's why even though I find that what we hear from people is when we open these conversations really gently with just a really, if you're the person who's bringing the family together or a group, you can say, you know what, I wanted to bring us together today just to tell you that if I get sick, here's what I'd like you to all do for me.
Yep.
It's a really simple way to start
Yeah,
a conversation.
Yeah, that's great.
And then the opposite of that is true. Say if I'm a daughter and I'm talking to my father, I'm saying, you know, Dad, we're all getting on here. I said, it would really help me to know what you want me to do if you get sick.
Yeah.
And that's a simple conversation starter. And we're amazed how many people are actually just, you know, it's in our mind. We think about it. And so the conversation is easier than it sometimes than we think it's going to be.
Yeah. And like we say, particularly out of crisis time, if you can make this, normalize it more, it doesn't have to be, you know, again, the heaviness that we're talking. I know that we have a short time left, but I just want to come back to anything else that you want. I know we could talk about this topic ongoing and just scratch the surface. What else would you like the audience to know?
I think mostly that this is in your control.
Yep.
This really is something you can do pretty easily to start to make your own personal plan. And you don't need a lawyer to do it. You don't
Right.
need a doctor to do it.
Right.
Sometimes we don't know that. Again,
Yep.
it's not been made clear to people that they can do their own healthcare proxy.
Right.
So on the Honoring Choices website, we have the English one-page healthcare proxy.
Yep.
We also translated it into 15 languages
Great.
because we want everybody to be able
Absolutely.
to have this. So that's an easy way to start for the month of April and Healthcare Decisions Month. Just go to the website, download the form. If you can't print it, some people say, you know, I don't have a printer at home. Go to your local library or your local council on aging. We work with many of them, and they'll be able to help you just get a free healthcare proxy or a free and personal directive.
Yep.
And then you can start to fill it out yourself. The
That's
directions are
perfect.
there for you.
And we're going to put up a graphic, Sue, that will point people into the directions, but www.honoringchoicesmass.com.
That's right.
Okay, so
Yeah.
people can access that, and we'll make sure that there's a graphic up for people too, that they can access that, but I think that that's really important information.
Great.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. Really appreciate it, Ellen.
Always
This
a
is
pleasure.
such important information.
Well, thank you. It's always my pleasure, Mary. And you know, you can, if anyone has any questions going forward, you also can contact Honoring Choices by going to that website, and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks.